like to bring up just a couple of events we've got on our calendar. Tomorrow afternoon here in Colfax, we will welcome Andrew Lawler and his latest book, The Secret Token, which is about the lost colony of Roanoke. It is a nonfiction book. And tomorrow evening at Trinity United Methodist Church, we're welcoming Sally Field.
This is the first time I've done this where I'm still writing stuff. Okay.
And if you want to wait, I'll turn it off.
There, I did one embarrassing thing, so we're all good. Put the pen away so I don't edit while I'm talking. That's bad. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to start talking about my high school experience because every good story starts with high school. And so when I started high school, I had this stellar reputation for being a good student and for being a hard worker. But as I progressed through high school, I did not live up to that reputation, and so I thought I was a fraud. My grades were miserable to the point where me graduating high school was more, I didn't earn it, they just gave it to me, probably because I'm nice or whatever. And I wasn't a hard worker because if any reason for me not doing my homework was okay for me, especially if it involved going to a ska or a punk show. And so around the time that I was graduating high school, I felt like a failure and a fraud. And so I asked my dad for advice. I asked him, like, what do I do with my life, dude? And I probably phrased it like that, but in a little bit more of a melancholy way. What do I do with my life, dude? So he said, like, well, I don't know. Maybe it hasn't been invented yet. And he took that from his own life because his stellar career in information technology had not been invented when he was graduating high school. And then he went on to tell me, like, whatever you do, make sure that you love doing it. And if you ask him about retirement, he oftentimes will tell you, like, why would I retire and do the exact same thing that I do anyways, but not be paid for it? So the guy loves his job. So my translation of those two statements were, be open, be curious, you'll find what you love in unexpected places, and that having a purpose in life or finding your life meaningful is way more important than the traditional nonsense definitions of success, such as Ferrari. That's okay. Because having a purpose would be worth its weight in platinum if it actually were tangible. So you can't give someone a purpose in a box, like gift box. Yeah, I said it. Okay. Yep. So I went to art school because I love doing art. So why not follow my dad's advice? And to my parents' credit, they never once asked me, "What are you going to do with an art degree?" I got asked that by tons of other people, but not by my parents. And it was going okay until in 2007, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which I don't blame anybody for not knowing what it is because I didn't know what it was. I still kind of don't. But basically it's a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So schizophrenia is defined largely by like hallucinations, paranoia, delusions, like everybody can read my mind right now, so why am I even talking in the first place? Or, paranoia, well, I suppose, I won't tell you about my paranoia. I don't want you to know. And there's also this like sense of disconnectedness, like I'm kind of here, but also someplace else, but it's not nearly as cool as being the Quisak's Hatterack in Dune. Because I don't get like a sweet suit where I never have to drink again because I just recycle everything. And then the bipolar disorder aspect is mood swings. I'm not always this pleasant. I get the deepest, darkest depression where no flashlight on Earth except for my little Uber over there. That's Karen. Will be able to help. I can feel all of the feelings all at once in the most intense, sort of confusing, nonsensical way. And I'm also hypersensitive to other people's emotional states. So you all better remain calm, so I remain calm. But when I was told, I was like, this is kind of alluring. what better thing for an artist to be than actually insane? Like, this is how we justify our artists in society. Is like, he's crazy, like he must be good. And that allure almost proved fatal. So from 2009 to 2010, it was the end of 2009, the beginning of 2010, it wasn't the entire year, I received electroconvulsive therapy 3 times a week for 6 months. And it saved my life, but in the process it left me with a life that didn't oftentimes seem really worth living. This side is blank. It's supposed to be blank. Intentionally left blank. Dad, you like that joke. So my life was rather, I'm really killing the mood, like we're supposed to be serious and stuff. Sorry. It's about to get serious. My life, the life I was left with was rather hopeless, it was pointless, and it was bleak because it was bereft of all meaning. Everything and everyone I'd ever known or loved or cared about was now a stranger to me. I could not read or draw or paint or fix computers. I had such severe memory loss that I didn't remember much of my childhood or college, and I was really bad at forming new memories, which is kind of helpful for like remembering if you hung out with someone the other day. And so I didn't know who I was or where I'd come from, and I was told in 6 months my memory would be all back to Norman, and it wasn't. So at the age of 24, I found myself sleeping on the floor of my parents' bathroom, because that was the safest possible place. My dad read a bedtime story to me, like I was like a 5-year-old. We read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It was great. It was some of the only times I ever laughed during that period. And mostly I was consumed with the thought of relearning everything that I'd once known was just mercilessly intimidating. It was too colossal to comprehend, so instead I just got angry with the clock. And if you've ever heard one of my rants against time, this is where it comes from. My days were monotonous and desperate. About the only thing I could rely on were my parents regularly coming home to check on me to make sure I was still alive. And also the painful and horrifying psychotic episodes that were a daily occurrence, sometimes multiple times a day. I liked being outside, but I could not go outside for like a walk or what have you, because I would just be crippled with psychosis and paranoia. So I was trapped, and my childhood home became a prison. So it became this monotonous struggle to survive until tomorrow, but tomorrow didn't look all that great. There's nothing to look forward to. This is in italics, so I think I'm supposed to skip that. And so now I'm here, and my dad was totally right. I am a professional crazy person. It's what I do for a living. And I had no idea that such a career opportunity was available to me when I was graduating high school, but look at me now. And it was largely, it wasn't like, I'm going to write a book. It was just struggling for anything for like purpose and meaning in my life. And I've learned along the way, it's not just like a nice thing to have. It's not like a perk. It's not like, what do they call it? Fringe benefits, or is it fringe benefits? Fringe benefits. Okay, I learned something today. It's a survival tactic. If I don't find purpose in my life, if I don't find it meaningful, like, I don't know why I'm here. I'm here right now to talk, but, and I started writing because I was way too tense to paint. I took painting way too seriously. Painting carried the weight of my identity. It was the justification for the fact of my existence, and that is too much weight for like some paints to hold. So I couldn't do it, imagine that. I've since learned that some things are too serious to be taken seriously, which is why I'm cracking jokes, and thank you for laughing. And it was too much weight, and so I didn't do it, and so in the process I felt like a failure and a fraud every time I looked at my easel or told somebody, I'm an artist. Because there's that little voice back in my head that's like, you haven't painted for 6 months. Because I hadn't. But writing was doable. It was easy. It was portable. I got a notebook here, I got a notebook here. I can write in either one of them. I got pens. Like, I don't need to like prepare like easels or, you know, paints or anything. I just pick up a notebook and start writing, and that was doable for me. And so I had something to say, and I had all the time in the world to say it. So there were some days where I would write 11,000 words, and they were probably all thrown out, but I had occupied my day and felt like a worthwhile human being. So it occupied the lonely and monotonous days, and it kept my mind occupied enough to stave off the voices in my head that told me so many cruel and untruth things about myself. And I wrote because I could. And that's basically how it started. So, one of the other interesting facets that Anne pointed out about me was I have forgotten a lot about my life. I have a near photographic memory of every movie I've ever watched. So I can quote Terminator like nobody's business, but I have no idea, like, of the sense of my age or like what happened prior to my ability to start forming new memories. So, oh boy, I hope I didn't miss this. Here's your stuff. No, this is my stuff. Boy, I'm super organized. So what I've done is I'm gonna read because that's what you're supposed to do when you do these things. And I'm gonna do the DVD commentary track. Not at the same time because I didn't really I can't talk with two voices at once, even though I can hear two voices at once. I'm gonna read, and hopefully I don't mess it up because this is something I'm terrified of, is reading what I already wrote. And I picked it thematically, so it wasn't just like a totally random thing. So the first one is Emmett, who's the main character, is riding in a car, just kind of lost in his own thoughts. This section talks about like the allure of mental illness and the deadliness of it and whatnot. So hopefully I don't mess this up. And if I do, feel free to laugh. It'll make me feel better. So, lost in thought, Emmett watches a bike messenger approach the intersection, pause momentarily at the red light, and then dash across at breaknecks its horn. The bike messenger yells an obscenity and continues on. Jane sees it too. She's one of the other characters. Just, I figured you all knew that, but I could say it. DVD commentary. Jane sees it too and lets out a tiny gasp as the messenger speeds away on his errand. Emmett makes no sign of having seen the near accident. He's lost in a memory which the scene has churned up from the recesses of his ECT-fried brain. There had been a time when he'd ridden his bike as recklessly as the bike messenger just had, a time when suicide had seemed a welcome end to his life, and had spoken to him sweetly from a distance while he pedaled, calling him home as he weaved in and out of traffic, her siren song beckoning him to ride headlong into oncoming traffic. She'd sung of the glory of it, of a memorable and tragic exit, but mostly she'd sung of an end to his suffering. It seemed to him he'd been made to suffer. Such was his lot in life, which is a Star Wars reference that you're allowed to laugh at when you're reading the book. But I didn't put that in there because that's for the DVD commentary. The siren's adjuring voice had comforted him, and in the end, Emmett was forced to a crossroads, what Dr. Romero later termed his existential imperative, the ultimatum which brought him before the mercy of the good doctor's electrocuting paddles. And in that place where life and death existed on such equal footing, Emmett had chosen life. He doesn't regret his choice. Even today, now and then, the sweet seduction of the siren song still haunts him. While it had failed to lure him onto the rocks of his destruction, its song entices him with promises made but never specified. He feels a certain affinity toward his illness. Here lives art. Here lives solace. Here lives genius, the siren seems to sing. The nobility of suffering, the romance of a tragic ending. Looking back on his surviving those deathly shallows, he can see the deceit and treachery together with the platonized attraction. He knows all too well how sweet the song is, and he can't deny the appeal of relinquishing himself to the final embrace of his own twisted head. But at the same time, he knows that surrendering to the song would pull him into the shoals of despair, to a destruction from which there may be no return. Emmett is brought out of his reverie as the car suddenly stops. James found a parking spot a block and a half away. And that's where the first reading ends. And if you want to question me at any point, feel free. But I'm gonna talk about it and do the actual commentary. So there's always been this like sense to me, like especially in the past, that having a mental illness, especially of the psychotic variety, legitimized me as an artist. Like that was why I was an artist, and that made me a better artist because I see stuff that's not there. I seem to experience this reality that is not a commonplace, everyday sort of reality. And we do that at a cultural level too. Like artists and geniuses are often justified in their madness because of their madness. Think of Vincent van Gogh. He cut off his ear. That, like, you know, that's not a good thing to do because he can't hear as well. But boy, that made him a good artist, right? Right? No. I don't think it actually affected his ability to paint, other than it was probably hurt a lot. Then there's John Nash, who was the dude that the Gladiator guy played in A Beautiful Mind. Roaming, you know, just doing math. And everyone being like, what a genius, no wonder he's crazy. And then there was the kid that I knew in art school, who's kind of the antithesis of this. And there was this huge pressure in art school to like live crazy, then your art will be better. And there was this kid I remember who would like, you know, give himself his own haircut. I've been giving myself my own haircut for a while, and I didn't do it as terribly as this. I did end up with a mullet, but like this guy had like bald spots everywhere, and that was like his legitimacy as you know, like, this is why I'm a good painter. Like, yeah. He probably talked like that too. And that was kind of the culture that existed then, was this sense of like being legitimate because you're crazy. I've since learned that I don't make art because of my mental illness, I make it despite my mental illness. I got taco stickers, which everyone should get, like all of them. That kind of express this idea. It's like, it's a taco that's sitting on a chair that says, we need to talk about mental health. So, or is it mental illness? Something like that. That was a long, difficult lesson to learn, was the idea that mental illness does not legitimize me as an artist. It's just this thing I happen to have. Like, it's not this justifying aspect of my identity. It just is what it is. Because that allure is a lie. Like Admiral Akbar said, when he realized that the rebel fleet was in danger, it's a trap. I did not play Admiral Akbar in that movie because I was like not born when it happened. And it's the trap of the allure of mental illness is just as fatal as a fully armed and operational battle station. Like, shouldn't have gone there. Like, should have had a different plan. At least in terms of Star Wars. Or, to use another sci-fi classic reference, in the movie Terminator, when Kyle Reese, who's John Connor's dad, is like trying to tell Sarah Connor, like, no, like this robot thing is like a serious big deal, like pay attention. I looked up this quote to get it right. He says, where is it? Listen and understand, the Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it will absolutely not stop ever until you're dead. That was mental illness for me for a while. Not so much anymore, because I just stopped that movie and went on to a different one. I don't know what movie I'm on right now, but and it's like the Death Star can be blown up by a bunch of ragtag scallions and like really cool, like, you know, fighters with like little droids like commenting like, dude, and like backseat drivers. The Terminator can be crushed with a hydraulic press, but there's no cure for mental illness. I can't take the mental illness out of me and still be me, because it is me, but it's, you know, it's something I just have to live with. It's something that I have to like learn how to embrace properly and not get so worked up over. So anybody want to ask me questions? Because you can, or we can wait until afterwards. It's totally cool. We'll wait until afterwards, because that's what my mom told me. She's right. Officer. I want to remain anonymous. Sorry, Mom. Okay, so this next one's a little bit more. It was maybe appropriate that I just potentially embarrass my mom, because this involves the main character being hostile to his mom, seemingly for no reason. There's a sense of like loneliness or abandonment, especially right after psychosis. And what would happen to me oftentimes is like, I get so psychotic that I'd be like, call my parents and be like, well, let's take you home. And I would wake up in my parents' basement because that's where I felt safe being at the time. And all this stuff's going, like everybody's acting normal. And I'm like, I just went places, I've just seen stuff. Like, can we just respect this? And it maybe wasn't that they weren't respecting it, but there was a sense of abandonment. So I'm gonna read some more, hopefully more successfully than the first time. He almost always regrets being taken back to mom and dad's house after a psychotic episode, especially on a Friday night. There's a certain cheeriness, a specific productive air about the house that immediately sours him to the experience of being around them on a Saturday morning. Dad in the laundry room, checking the pockets of mom's clothes for tissues so he can tease her later about trying to sneak one past him. Mom at the kitchen counter, watching one of those terrible cooking shows, still in her pajamas, foot bouncing up and down and up and down and up and down as she eats her eggs and bacon and stares at her iPad, which is never more than a few feet away from her. Karen puppy, she disappeared. No, I see her. She's resting. Karen puppy, his dearest friend in the backyard, sunning herself and having the time of her life, so happy and carefree and eager to chase any small mammal that approaches the yard. And then Emmett, beneath his 5 or 6 blankets to help him feel safe, not coaxed out of sleep gently by the pool of dextroamphetamine, but yanked out by Guy Fieri? That guy.
Ferrari.
I made a Ferrari reference earlier. He probably drives a Ferrari. This is why I wrote it and I don't speak it. I'm not doing the audiobook version. And his nauseating optimism and the sound of the dryer door banging closed, the mere presence of other human beings in close proximity as Emmett's early warning systems try to kick him into high gear, getting him deeper and deeper into panic as he realizes he's in too drugged a state to defend himself, and then resolutely disappointed because it's just the TV. Because it's just Dad. No need to panic. Everything's okay. Emmett waits for Dad to get out of the laundry room, staring at the blurry ceiling tiles, alternately squinting and resting his eyes to see what kind of a difference it makes. Squinting his eyelids makes his eyelids quiver, just like smiling makes the edges of his mouth twitch. Both make him look like a drug addict or a crazy person. So he doesn't do either very often. Doesn't have reason to do either very often. Either. Glasses make it so he doesn't have to squint, and what does he have to smile about anyway? Dad sits in front of his computer, mouse clicking away. Annoyed, Emmett asks Dad to get out of there as politely as he can. He's been awake for 5 minutes and already his patience is worn thin. It's going to be a long weekend. But Dad understands, if only he understood in the first place. He gets up from his chair and heads upstairs, the stairs creaking in a premature kind of way, the way you'd expect a house twice the age of this one to creak. They don't make them like they used to. He changes into fresh clothes and heads back upstairs. As predicted, Mom is sitting there in her jammies, leg bouncing up and down and up and down and up and down, not in time to any music, more a genetic reflex. Emmett does the exact same thing when his leg is in that position, just like Grandpa had done. It's a proud family tradition. Morning, Emmett, Mom says cheerily. Karen's outside. Yep, Emmett says, about all the conversation he can manage. He so desperately wants to be polite, wants to be a morning person, but fuck, what else is he supposed to do? He grabs a mug from the cupboard and begins to pour some coffee from the carafe. Good coffee, Mom adds. It's the cheerfulness that does it for Emmett. Okay. Emmett's voice dismissive. Milk creamer from the fridge. He pours the tiniest amount into the mug and stirs it into the coffee. The coffee turns the color of a burnt Werther's original. He takes a sip. And then there's a voice that exists in Emmett's head, in my head too. She says some very unpleasant things that I don't want to repeat because there's certain people here that I love that it's directed at. Is Myra said it, which, so I'm just gonna skip ahead to Emmett replying to the voice. And Emmett says, what's that, Em? Mom says, nothing. Good coffee? Nope. Mom gets an exasperated look on her face. Maybe she's tried extra hard to make good coffee for him this time, or now he's just gone and insulted your coffee making skills. But if the roles were reversed, he'd rather be told the truth than be lied to. Better to know that your coffee is shitty than to go on believing you're making good quality coffee and end up looking like a fool in front of company someday, right? He doesn't know quite what to do. He takes another sip from his coffee. A chorus of voices suggests that he throw the coffee in Mom's set face. He tells him to shut up in his mind, which just makes them laugh with glee. Mornings after psychosis at Mom and Dad's house often start out this way. Maybe he ought to have this conversation with Mom right now. But with the chorus of voices chanting and singing and ranting, there's no telling what might happen. He pours a measure of sugar into the coffee and stirs it in, then squeezes his way between Mom and the kitchen chair, saying, "No, you're fine," when she tries to scoop forward, and he grabs his cardboard tin of tobacco and heads outside. Reading's done. This is going. Like, no one's, I haven't blown up. I haven't, nothing's on fire. Because Karen, is anything on fire? No.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not until there's some cigarettes after this. So, preceding what I just read was, one of the psychotic episodes where Emmett's taken into, back to his parents' house, can't be trusted out by himself, so we're just gonna take him back home. And there's a sense of mourning, not mourning AM, mourning like the dove, that comes after psychosis. It's traumatizing, it's painful. And it sucks when it's coming out of that, and it's everyone else is just oh, it's just a normal Saturday morning, we're all having a good time here, right? What's up with you, Emmett? Why did you jerk? Makes sense. Like in the previous back up. There's a sense of complacency that comes with the normalcy of repeated psychotic episodes. It becomes this routine. It's it's psychotic again, we're gonna go and do this thing, and we just do this stuff, it'll all be okay. It's frightening what human beings can become accustomed to. And when something takes on when something becomes accustomed to, when it has a sense of normalcy, there's a sense of complacency in which a life of terror is just everyday life. And that hurts in a sense. So the anger is appropriate. It's maybe a little bit misdirected because it's not that the TV is on. It's not the bouncing of the leg up and down. It's not Emmett's dad doing the laundry. It's not the weak, watered down coffee. It's anger at something larger, something incomprehensible, something massive. And maybe it's Emmett's inability to cope, his inability to maintain, his inability to be an adult, his inability just to make it through an average, everyday kind of experience without something horrifying happening. And that's too big to comprehend sometimes. So it's when we're angry at such colossal things, we tend to nitpick the smaller things. It's if you got a big steak, just cut it into pieces. Except this isn't steak; it's insanity. I've learned over the years that all my emotions are legitimate. I cannot help or choose what I feel or when I feel it, but I can choose what I do about it. So, in the next reading, Emmett freaking apologizes because it's the right thing to do, because that's what his mom taught him. Sitting out on the porch, smoking a cigarette, finding himself paying less attention to his phone and more attention to what little baby Karen is so interested in, Emmett feels himself calm down. Bad coffee isn't the end of the world. Myra is just spoiled and needs to learn a thing or two about gratitude, and he needs to learn to stop listening to her quite so much. He finishes his cigarette and goes into Mom, who's still in front of her iPad, playing solitaire and watching the Food Network. "Sorry about the coffee comment," Mom says. "Oh, no worries, Emmett. It's just that Myra was trying to get the best of me, and I think I might have said it a little rudely, and I was just trying to say it matter-of-factly," Emmett goes on to explain. "I learned quite a while ago not to take how you say things personally, but I appreciate the apology," Mom says, smiling. "Thanks. But by all means, make your own coffee. I don't mind in the least. Okay. Emmett says, more an acknowledgement that he'd heard her than an agreement that he'd make himself new coffee. He pours his second cup of coffee. The coffee is a weak, light brown color. Next, the tiniest amount of coconut creamer into the cup. And this time he adds a few shakes of salt to the coffee. You know that's salt, right? And Mom says, yep. Emmett says, smiling. The salt will make the coffee taste more flavorful. His concession to not being able to drink coffee as strong as he'd like. Mom just shakes her head as he heads back inside to enjoy the mid-morning air. And it's, I hadn't written it, I'm gonna wing it from now on. Isn't that what we all do in life always? Just winging it? Like we don't have any plans, we just show up here and there are people here and you wrote a book and you're expected to say stuff about it, so you're saying stuff and people seem to at least understand you're speaking coherently, which I think I am. There's so much of a weight of like responsibility, you know, like when you're a failure because of you. When you're a fraud because of all the things you've like not lived up to in your life. And they can accumulate and they can become so weighty that they become impossible to tango with. I'm not a good dancer to begin with, but I even worse at tangoing with life sometimes. But it's necessary to hold yourself responsible it's necessary for me to hold myself it's like you all have done wrong by me and I'm gonna, you know. It's necessary for me to hold myself responsible for my actions because there may be other inexplicable, kind of intangible, just like super weighty reasons for a lot of the hostile nonsense that happens, but there's nobody else that did it but me. It's like if I'm gonna maintain that like I'm not actually possessed by somebody else when I mean that it's still me, I gotta own up to it. And in that process, it's like humanity can be regained because it's like so much of the dehumanizing factor of mental illness is the idea that a person ceases to be a person. I was totally different when I came home from college with a mental illness. I was not the Chris I used to be. I don't think I still am because I've seen too much. But by holding myself responsible for my actions, but not, you know, condemning myself because of my emotions, seems to be a better way to go. And I feel as though that's the place where I should end because if I don't end there, it's gonna get stupid. So if you have any questions, I would like to answer them, and then you can question my answers, and you can just continue. What's up?
So when you and I had coffee, you talked about, was it your aunt who said, and then I forget the third one, be kind, be responsible, be
Self-control.
Self-control, and that seems to feed into this thing
Oh,
you
yeah,
ended
yeah,
on in
yeah.
terms of mental illness. And I feel like it goes to the, how do I be a lot of things? How do I have hallucinations and moods that get beyond me and be this kind of decent person I want to be?
Yeah, yeah.
I want to, can you talk more about it?
Yeah, because that was my mom. Who I'm
She's
gonna.
great.
Yeah. Have you met her?
I did.
Okay, good.
She could be anywhere.
She's with us now. Oh boy. Come to a book signing, hear heresy. Because the other one, it was like I was like pre-installed with like all of the useful advice that I would actually remember, much like Terminator references or whatever, by it being repeated over and over again. So like my sister and I are like, you know, we're gonna go to like this stupid Super Bowl party and like, you know, play around with the kids while the adults watch these like people try to hug each other on TV, because that's football, right? It's just everybody's trying to hug each other, but no one wants a hug. Okay, I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'd be like in the car, you know, it's like, what's the best thing to tell? It's like, be kind, be responsible, be self-control, because it's not like so constricting, you know, like that time I got banned from singing at the dinner table, which was pretty adorable to me. It's like, I must like singing. But you know, it's open enough to like lend responsibility, to interpret kindness, to interpret self-control. The other thing I was told is life isn't fair. I would put that on my knuckles if I had more fingers, but then I'd also be a pianist because like I could, you know, like, yeah, because if you have more fingers, you can play better, right? It's like having more wheels on a car. Back to reality. And so it's that idea that like it can be empowering if you hold yourself responsible for your actions, but not in this like kind of morally condemning, like, oh man, I went to school like 5 times and I never did it. It's like, you know, holding myself responsible for smaller things, you know, such as treating his mom like she doesn't deserve to be treated simply because life happens. And, you know, it's when anger, you know, or frustration with like the vast complexities of mental illness, you know, becomes so incomprehensible that even thinking about it as a steak that you eat one piece at a time doesn't make sense, turn it into steak. I can control what I do as a result of my mental illness, like the emotions that I feel, but I can't control its existence, and I feel as though that's the fundamental misunderstanding. It's like, you can't help crazy, but you can help what you do with crazy. Wow. Come see Chris be impressed with stuff he says. What's up?
What is something that you've learned about how to live your life that people who don't have a debilitating mental illness could apply to their lives and do better?
That mental illness is not, or mental health is not solely my concern because I have a mental illness. It's everybody's concern. Like, mental, you know, it's, the Terminator's not discriminating, and neither is mental illness. And you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be like psychosis or, you know, like these literal demons following you around in order for it to be a crap show. So it's, mental health is everybody's concern, and it should be a priority in everybody's life. And the idea that I'm really bad at like basic hygiene, though I managed to like actually wash myself somewhat before I came over here because I'm a professional. But I know other people, like everybody totally bathes regularly around here except Karen. She's had 2 in her life. You know, brushing teeth, that kind of, like, that's part of the daily routine of life, the part of like maintenance of our bodies, but there's also maintenance of the soul, of the mind, and that there's not so much a helplessness involved. You know, it's like when you don't brush your teeth for like 50 years, like they're gonna fall out, and then it's gonna be expensive. You know, when you don't comb your hair regularly, you end up with dreadlocks, and you know, like that's kind of cool, I guess, but like that's ratty. And so there are consequences to that, and there are consequences to ignoring the need for rest, the need for 20 minutes worth of a nap every day, whether you want to or not. Highly recommend. And so yeah, did I answer it? Okay, good. What grade did I get? I was kind of hoping for like an A- because I kind of felt as though there'd be room to grow if I had an A-. Because if I got an A, I don't have to think about it every day. I like thinking. Give me an A-. I got an A-, which is still passive.
What motivates you?
It's easier when people ask like questions about like, I don't, you know, it depends on the day. I'm motivated to serve others. I'm motivated by, you know, loving other people. I'm motivated by, I don't know. That's one of those like huge questions that we can like write a book about. So sequel. You know, it's you know, it's like, I'll answer it this way. I used to like, routine is very important, and I used to, but I sometimes cripple myself with my routine because it's like, well, you know, I have to be up at this time, and this time this stuff happens. And for a while it worked until I started getting up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, I'm a morning person. I used to wake up at like 11. That was like a good early day because of the meds that I was on. And, you know, after a while, it was like work started at 9 or whatever, a.m. And then when I started getting up at 6, it's like, well, crap, like, I'm gonna have to do all this stuff. And it's like, I'm an artist, so I'm temperamental by nature, and I'm the only one that can like deal with my temperamentalness because Karen sleeps in. And so it's like it was like waking up early enough that like the motivation was gone to write, and it's like, holy crap, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's like the same thing that happened with painting. And so what I've learned is like, what is the day asking of me? Like, which I actually learned from, oh boy, a Philip Rothfuss book. Don't quote me on that. Where there's a character who's just like wakes up and is like, depending on the light of the day, it's either a gathering day or a making day or something other, or exploring day. And you know, it's like 3 types of days, and it's like you can't determine the day ahead of time. It's like it's just kind of like whatever the day is. So I guess basically my answer is there's not like one single driving thing. It's whatever gets me through the day, you know, and that's many things, but it's mostly love, you know. It's mostly the people that are here listening to my nonsense. It's, you know, that's motivation. It's like for a long time I didn't quite understand why other people wanted me to be on this planet too. I was like, you know, people would be like, you should keep living. I'm not so sure about that. And now I believe them. And it's, you know, it's like when my friend Phil told me like, I love you, dude. And I was like, I know, like I'm worth loving. Like it wasn't like this ironic kind of just like, no, dude, like, yeah, I'm totally, it was like this moment where it's like, I know my own worth, and that worth is love.
So, to go back to your third rule, self-control.
Am I not doing it right now? Okay, good.
Well, I don't know if you are, because I want to know what your interpretation of self-control is. And then to tie it into motivation, do they work with each other? Do they work against each other?
Everything's connected, man. But which is true. So it's my definition of self-control is one of the I think of like mania as this like kind of megalomaniacal kind of like everything's about me, to the point where it's like I will ignore other people establishing boundaries because it's like, no, it's like everything's delightful, and it's like here's this stupid pun and here's that stupid idea. And that's not being self-controlled. That's kind of just like letting the wheels of insanity like get out of sync, and like every once in a while you have to get your tires rotated. And part of that is self-awareness, or you know, like a sense of like consciousness. Not in the medical sense of like coming across someone like, are they conscious? Most people aren't. Like, you know, waking up to like respond to stimuli. But it's me being self-controlled is like allowing people as much space as they want to have, and in the process not like just putting myself like, you know, to the point where I'm just like shutting everybody out in the process. And being motivated by love, by, you know, wanting to love all the people, wanting to have Karen cuddle with all the people, and have Karen just like have all the laps possibly available. Yeah, Karen, kiss him. Have all the laps available in case my lap is unavailable because of laptop or large book or my phone in my pocket. I have to take my phone out of my pocket because she doesn't like that on my lap. It's okay for everybody else though. That giving people space to be the people that they need to be, that, you know, we can set boundaries so we're not intersecting each other, because we don't want Venn diagrams when we're interacting with people, unless those Venn diagrams are like permissible by everyone. I didn't want to say that word for some reason. Is that a shut up?
No, I have a question.
Oh, cool. It was looking like a horse pet. She has that magical ability over me where it's that I'm quiet. It's like the that'll do pick, like reference. Sorry. What's your
On a practical level, what are some of the things that you do day to day that help you have mental health hygiene, basically? We talked earlier about hygiene, but mental health.
The hygiene I actually do regularly.
Well,
That's what I
mentally.
meant. Yeah.
You know, keep yourself healthy.
Yeah. There are two routines that cannot change ever. There's the morning routine, which has to happen in the same way, otherwise my body and brain don't know to wake up. I like to treat myself like a computer sometimes, in the sense of I can program myself to do whatever is possible. And the nighttime routine, so it's like, morning routine is like get up, make some coffee, and then in the process, like my body will be like, no, dude, it's time to pee, so I'll go do that. I don't have to talk about the process of that, because I assume a lot of people here are potty trained. I want to assume everyone is. Karen's not, so I think she's working on it. And the cigarette to greet the day, and then it's like if I don't greet the day by like writing in my stupid little notebook about like here's some deep thoughts about life, it's like my day doesn't start until I do that. And it's healthy for me because it's this notebook where I'm like, here's my thoughts on the previous day, so that I can look back and know here's what was happening with my life when it's so hard to remember many aspects of my life. And that also gets me in the mindset of like, yesterday's done, it's time to be present. And then there's the nighttime routine, which when I complete it, it's like just I'm shutting down. Like it's like issuing the sudo shutdown -h command. Nerds. Yeah. Now, sorry. You can also specify it in seconds. Sorry. He didn't come here to learn computers. There's, medication, like same time every day. There's consistently connecting with people. There's getting out. Then there's the also like, embracing chaos or embracing the nonsense of the world. Accepting the fact that, like life may be a chaotic whirlpool of who knows what, but every once in a while you'll like dip out some like stuff that's pretty cool, So like getting out there and not necessarily like weighted down with the expectations of I will have a good day. Like Bob Wiley, like I feel great, I feel fine, I feel wonderful kind of thing. But just embracing the fact that life finds a way. Jurassic Park reference. So yeah, it's this kind of like, there are certain things that other routines, but it's like, if today's just not a writing day because like, man, we gotta go outside because there's like interesting stuff to see, or it's like stoop day, that's it, embracing that idea too. So it's not too firm that I break my own sanity, but not too loose that I just float away. It's another thing worth putting on the students' dinner.
So how much work is that? Like to
24/7 all day
consider
every day?
mental illness, hold mental illness, figure out next steps?
A lot of it is intuition, thankfully, because it's like you need to just like if it feels a particular kind of right, because it always feels right to just nap with Karen. But if it feels like a particular kind of right, it's like that's what I need to do. But even then, I'll like go against it because it'll be like my body's like, dude, it's really time for you to like rest and like not just pace your apartment, like moving things slightly. Well, I'll be like, no, that sounds like the best possible thing I could do with my time. And it's more like, embracing that like, I don't want to overthink it or necessarily think about it. I just kind of like, where does the belly want to go? Hopefully not to the fridge. Too many times.
We have 2 more minutes.
Okay.
If anybody wants one last question,
What's up?
now's the
Is
time.
there anything you can say about the way you relate to the content of the cycles?
Oh, yeah. So I have to. Dude, boy.
Bringing the real guns right again.
You should have texted that one to me ahead of time. I think it's in
How do
the
you feel
sense.
now?
It's in the sense of like, it's a serious, legitimate thing to consider, but it's also not something to take so seriously that that's all I can draw because that's all I've allowed myself to draw. That it doesn't contain a complete or all of the truth. Like it is not the sum total of everything true I've ever experienced, but it has portions of the truth. And that, just because it doesn't make sense doesn't mean it's not true. There. Is it? I could just dance the rest of the time. Or I shouldn't have offered that.
You can mention your stickers and your emails.
Oh yeah. So there are books that are over there that you can buy. I will draw stupid pictures of them, or funny pictures, or not stupid pictures, or I don't even have to draw anything in them whatsoever. And there's some business cards, one of them which has a picture of Karen on it. If you want to email me, I'm terrible at responding to email a lot of times, but it happens eventually. There's also the stupid taco stickers, and then there's this thing where you can sign up and give me your name, one of your names, one of your other names, your email address, and I'll send something eventually next time I do something like this. Cause we all have fun, right?
Yes.
Karen, did you have fun? Yeah, you got it. All the people. Yeah. I'm glad no one sat in those 8 chairs right there just so I could witness that. Okay, I'm done. Somebody else's book.
As Chris mentioned, we have books for sale in this case here on my left side. If I can ask a tiny favor that we pay for the book before we write in the book. Thanks.
And I think you go upstairs.